further to the last video on the backswing, where I focused a little bit more on how we moved the golf club, I'm going to look a little bit more on an interior view of it. Yesterday was looking more at the exterior view. You know, what is it that my arms are doing? What are my hands doing? And how does that affect, you know, how I take it back, and where does the top of the shaft go? You know, that was the discussion yesterday. That had everything to do around how you manipulated the club, which I think is huge. But there's another way that we can kind of get the club to move without it necessarily being arms and hands, and that's our body. That's the inner portion, or our pivot in our swing. And when we're trying to focus on a backswing that's more pivot oriented, because at times you might have to do that, or potentially you're working on a swing method model that requires you to do that. You know, when you're trying to make those moves, it'd be understanding that in order for me to move my body into certain orientations on the backswing, I kind of, you know, anticipate taking the club and my arms for a bit of a ride as, you know, my knees start to close up, my hips start to go, my chest starts to go, I stand a little taller, you know, all of those things as I wind up my right side high and my left side low. You know, that action can move the golf club a long way. And further to yesterday, where I talked about the forces and the torques we can put into this club, I can hold this club pretty lightly and let my pivot start and continue and finish itself and create, I don't know, 2/3 of my backswing. And by taking a grip, continuing up with my arms, I can make a pretty wide, big turn or a big move. So the things that I wanted to look at when it comes to how it is I use my pivot and how it is I use my body, a lot of that's going to be very related to how it is you can move. But I want us to have an idea here on the ground that we've got, you know, where our straight line is with our feet. Okay, that could be equal with our target line, but this toe line here would be like back to square or zero. Knees square to that, hips, shoulders, all that stuff square to this. And then we've got a ball line, right, where the ball line is. So when I'm looking at my swing from this perspective, from face on, I'm looking at trying to ensure that as I start to turn back into my swing, that my head stays still, meaning that I'm leaning down toward the ball with my left side as my right side pulls itself back to this ball line. You know, from where you're looking right on this camera line here, and I'm trying to get my left side to that line and my right side away from that line. In order to do so and keep my head fairly stable over the golf ball, I want to make sure that I turn to the right as I lean my body down to the left. And now when we look at it from this perspective, we get a little bit of a better view on the tilting or the angles that we're doing this on. When I look at here, I can see that my right knee extending and my left knee bending, therefore creating a tilt. Same thing with the hips, same thing with the top of the shoulder line. So down the line, trying to evaluate the level of tilt, the rate of the tilt, you know, when the tilts stop, right? And from this view here, face on, we can start to see the rotation, the right side disappearing from the camera view because it's being replaced by the left. And we can see the hat, or the head, something around the top of the body, staying fairly stable in the camera view as all of this starts to wind itself up to the top. And I like to use words like winding up, because if we talk about backswing, people might take it back. Upswing might make people get too high. So whatever it is that you're making that move to go back, making sure that you can measure your movement from right to left via rotation this way, right? And then from over here, making sure all those lines of the tilts of each segment, knees, hips, and chest, are able to get into a tilted line. Because from there, again, if I make my move where I don't hold the club very hard and I take it up to the top, staying over the golf ball, ensuring I'm getting enough tilt down and enough rotation, I can get this club moved all the way to here without having to do anything with my arms. They haven't left the middle of my body yet, my midline. They're still right here. So when I add all of that together, being able to make my right side rise up as the left side rises down, making the backswing go all the way to here without any pull away, without any hand action, scissoring action to pull this club, focusing on the pivot's great. And sometimes it takes a little while to be able to change your trigger off the ball to be something more pivot related. So I like to think of it like the first foot of that takeaway is so important. Are we trying to take it away more aggressive with the arms, feeling it in the hands? Or are we trying to feel like we can get the club to move away from the golf ball because the body is doing something different? And I think that those two things change the trigger, pivot trigger versus an arms or hands trigger. And changing that trigger really can change how and when you put that emphasis, forces, and torque into that club. And one of the ways you can monitor that is by, putting a club across your chest and seeing that as you tilt and as you make your move back toward your backswing, that grip starts to face itself toward the ball, maybe a little outside it, and it doesn't pass the ball. I'm not looking to get all the way over here. I want the grip just to go down to get to the ball. And if I flipped it around this way, now the grip's on the other shoulder, I want that grip to go up until it gets to the ball. And that's as far as I'm going to go with it. So being able not to put too much into here, get it all the way back, working with a bigger, maybe wind up of a pivot, simply gives you the chance to get the hands higher to create a lot more speed. And the number one rule of speed is, did you take the grip as far as you can from where it started? Because the farther that path is, the more speed you'll create. And if we can get the pivot to max itself out, and then from there be able to be force and torque free to be able to do it later on, that's kind of the best recipe to make the best backswing, or the widest backswing, to give you the best chance to hit the ball solid and far.
Someplace warm. A place where the beer flows like wine. Where beautiful women instinctively flock like the salmon of Capistrano. I'm talking about a little place called Aspen.
I don't know, Lloyd. The French are assholes.